Do you have games in Deadlock that feel like they're close, but for some reason your team is down 20k souls? Maybe you've been farming the jungle and you're a few thousand souls up on your teammates. Surely they're holding you back, right? You've been doing the right thing. There's no way farming is bad. But what if I told you that, yes, farming is good, but it's the things you're deciding to farm that are losing you games? Farming souls should be the biggest thing on your mind in a game of Deadlock. Yes, you need them to buy items, but your character also levels up based on hitting certain thresholds of souls, increasing your base damage and health, and allowing you to level up your abilities. I see a lot of videos talking about how people should power farm this or power farm that, but they cause a lot of people to overlook more important and more effective places to farm souls. So with that said, let's look at the different sources of souls around the map and which ones you should be prioritizing to win more games. First off, we've got candletroopers. At the start of the game, farming just one wave of candletroopers gives 300 souls. This is only around 100 less than you get for your first kill, and more valuable than early kills after your first. This means that you should always prioritize last hitting candletroopers before you look to harass your lane opponent. This also means that if you die a couple of times in lane, you should not rage disconnect. Kills aren't worth that much early, and with the low death timers of early game, you shouldn't miss too much farm before you're back in lane. This game has plenty of comeback potential, and if I see my new favorite game get as toxic as League or Overwatch, I cannot speak of the things I will do and the wrath that will be unleashed upon Sorry. So in lane you should be farming candletroopers, and by this I don't mean fully emptying clips into them the second you see one. I mean keeping an eye on their health bars through the wall so you can kill them when they're lower health and confirm the souls. Confirming and denying souls in lane and throughout the game is also very important. If you deny enemy souls, not only do you gain souls, but the enemy loses out on souls they would otherwise get. This means that denying essentially gives you double the soul advantage that regular farming would give. With this in mind, denying and confirming souls should essentially be your primary focus in lane. Now, none of this is to say you shouldn't ever try to harass or poke your lane opponent, but realize that the biggest reason to do so is so that your opponent has a more difficult time farming. Getting your opponent to half HP doesn't matter unless it makes them scared to secure farm. Look for trades that hinder your opponent without you having to give up waves. Now, there's another source of souls in lane that a lot of people don't think about, and just by realizing how valuable they are, you can put yourself ahead of other players. I'm talking about guardians and walkers. When you break a guardian, everyone on your team gets 275 souls. This might not seem like much, but when you multiply it for everyone on your team, that's 1,650 souls. That's pretty decent value, especially in the early game. Walkers, on the other hand, give everyone on your team 750 souls, which totals out to 4,500 souls for your team. This is assuming none of these souls get denied, and I have a whole video talking about why these are some of the most valuable denies in the game, which you should definitely check out when you're done this video. But realizing just how many souls these bad boys hold should change how you play the game. Let's say you're in base and you see your team starting a fight on the map. Before you hop on the zipline to the team fight, you should ask yourself, is there a lane I could push and an objective I can take while the enemy is distracted? Maybe there's a walker you can push, or a couple of guardians on the opposite side of the map from the fight. In this situation, by going to break some of these objectives, you're likely to gain more souls for your team than the enemy will by getting a couple of kills. This kind of strat is called split pushing, and with the value of guardians and walkers, it's always worth considering, especially if your hero has ways to clear waves or to break objectives quickly. Something to keep in mind though is that splitting to break the twin guardians at the enemy's base is almost never worth it over splitting for other objectives. These guardians give 125 souls to everyone on your team when you break them, meaning your team gets 250 for breaking 2 of them, which is less than you get for breaking solo guardians. Breaking these guardians used to cause the enemy team to receive half of the souls for killing candletroopers in that lane, but at the point I'm releasing this video, that's been patched out. I didn't know this mechanic existed until it was gone, and honestly, I don't know how to feel about it. On one hand, it makes the twin guardians a more interesting objective to push for, but on the other hand, it makes it a lot harder for teams to come back when they're behind, which I think should always be a possibility in a MOBA. I go back and forth on it, but let me know in the comments if you think they should add it back in. Getting back to the discussion of split pushing though, you might wonder if it's worth it to split push for shrines or the enemy patron, and the answer is no. At one point, these objectives would give 500 souls to everyone on your team, but as of right now, you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir! In addition to not giving souls, They're also pretty difficult to split push for with how close they are to the enemy base. If theoretically you do find a chance to break a shrine by yourself to get a flex slot, or to break the enemy patron, it's great. But it's not worth trying to push down an entire lane to do that when there are other objectives you could be pushing for instead. Another objective people don't realize the importance of is the urn. Now, people had an excuse for this when the value of the urn was shown only to the ghost frog. But now that you don't have to go frame by frame to see the numbers, you should realize how good these annoying frog jars are.
Pick me up this instant!
The first urn that spawns at 10 minutes gives 3,000 souls to your team. To put this into perspective, that's worth about as much as taking 2 guardians, so it's a fair chunk of souls. Not to mention urns giving everyone on your team a permanent golden statue buff. The second urn gives 4,150 souls, which is a little less valuable than a walker. And the third urn gives 5,300 souls, which is more valuable than a walker. So with these numbers in mind, how often should you try to get the urn? Well, the answer is as often as you can. Anytime there's an urn up and you have a numbers advantage, or your lanes are pushed out, you should consider delivering it. Check first if there's any enemy structures you can break easily. For instance, with the first 2 urns, pushing down a walker would be worth more, so if there was an opportunity to break one, you should focus on that before you look to run urn. If there isn't anything pushable, then make sure the urn will have a neutral or closer to your team drop-off location. This requires a little math to know for sure, but it's typically about an 8 to 15,000 lead. If the drop-off location is towards you or neutral, tell your team that you want to do urn, and ask them for help in delivering it. If you hear one of your teammates comment that they're delivering urn, unless you're pushing or protecting something more valuable, typically a walker, you should always do what you can to help them deliver it. Conversely, do what you can to stop the enemy team if they're trying to deliver an urn. And if you can't stop them, try to deny as many souls from it as you can. Again, I have a whole video talking about why these denies are so good, which you should check out when you get the chance. Unfortunately, there is a lot of extra nuance to delivering urns that would take me a long time to cover in this video, so I'm planning on covering it in a whole video about urns. Subscribe for that soon, by the way. Just know for now that urns are basically always worth delivering as long as you're not giving up walkers to get them. The last place you should be looking for extra souls is jungle camps. Jungle camps are worth different values depending on the monsters in them. Small monsters are worth 43 souls when they first spawn, medium monsters are worth 89, and big monsters are worth 230. Also in the jungle are the Sinner Sacrifice slot machines, worth 360 souls when they first spawn. These used to be more tucked away than they are now, but they added big stairs in the buildings they're in because too many people had 40 hours in the game without knowing they existed. Another thing to keep in mind are crates and golden statues. Crates give 38 souls each when they first spawn, and golden statues give small permanent buffs. These might not seem like much, but crates and statues can add up very quickly considering how fast they are to break. Now I tell you about jungle camps with caution. Camps are a great way to gain extra souls or get back into a game of Deadlock. However, I see too many players, the second they learn about camps, start to prioritize them over everything else, farming every camp they can get their grubby little hands on the second laning phase ends. This is wrong. At 20 minutes, farming a wave of candletroopers will give you 472 souls, while taking a medium camp gives an average of 324 souls. Not only do waves give more souls, but they'll be killed by your candletroopers if you leave them, disappearing off the map as a soul resource. You know what doesn't disappear off the map by itself? Jungle camps. Those camps will sit and wait for someone to take them. In addition to this, pushing waves lets you break guardians and walkers, and can make it easier for your team to collect the urn. These are all ways your entire team can get more souls, instead of your greedy little butt sitting there trying to AFK farm the jungle. It is always correct to prioritize objectives before you look to take jungle camps. This not only means breaking enemy objectives, but also protecting your own. If you see one of your objectives being pushed by a wave, you should always look to go clear the wave before you do other things. You get to collect souls from the wave, and you prevent one of your objectives breaking and giving a bunch of souls to the enemy team. I see way too many people sit in jungle while the enemy team pushes walkers or goes to deliver an urn. Do not ignore more important things on the map to get yourself some extra souls. View jungle camps as a little treat, a reward you can take only after you've done the important job of collecting a wave or playing for an objective. Knowing when to take a camp is really about efficiency. Maybe you caught a wave and you're waiting for the next one to arrive. Maybe your lanes are all pushed up and you don't want to get caught out. There's no perfect rule for taking them, but generally the more time you spend on them, the worse they are. This is why getting a big camp or a slot machine sometimes isn't worth it, even though in total they're worth more souls than a wave. If you spend so much time taking them that you miss a couple of waves, or one of your walkers gets pushed, all of a sudden they're kind of bad. Another reason jungle should take a backseat to other sources of farm is that the souls you get there are unsecured, meaning you'll lose them if you die. Let me paint a horrible picture for you. You spend a bunch of time farming the jungle. You think it's chill because none of your walkers are in danger of being broken. After getting a few camps, you see that the enemy is going to deliver urn. Your team wants to fight them for it because they know how valuable it is, because they've subscribed to Logic Defender, and they know how handsome and cool and awesome and handsome he is. If you rotate over to the fight and die, you'll lose the souls you've collected. At best, meaning that the time you spent farming was worth nothing. And at worst, giving them to the enemy team, meaning that the time you spent was to get the enemy ahead. In this situation, the correct play is for you not to help with the fight. You can't risk losing those souls. But the enemy team will have the advantage without you there, so your team is more likely to lose urn. They all die trying to stop it, and they flame you in chat for not helping. You're trying to explain why you couldn't, but you're tearing up, and the tears land on your PC. Your PC starts smoking and bursts into flame. You try to put it out, but you can't, and as the fire spreads, you evacuate everyone in your house. You're relieved no one got hurt, until you remember your pet frog, Croaky. He was still inside, and he loved urns. And his spirit goes on to be worth 3,000 souls at 10 minutes, 4,150 souls at 15 minutes, 5,300 souls at 20 minutes. You can see the kind of situation unsecured souls can get you into. I too have fallen into the trap of not being careful enough after collecting them and delivering to the enemy the exact lead I was trying to obtain. All this to say, think before you jungle and think before you fight. So there you go. The reason you're behind games is farming. That 20k soul lead the enemy has is probably because they have more walkers broken than you do, or they've delivered more urns while you were focusing on farming the wrong things. To get better, you're going to have to change the way you prioritize farm. Many people's priorities playing Deadlock look something like this, with kills and jungle farming being a bigger focus than other farm that's not only worth more, but helps give your whole team an advantage instead of only you. In reality, your priorities should look more like this. Structures like guardians and walkers at the top, then urns underneath, then candletroopers, then kills, then jungle. Kills do become worth a lot more as the game goes on and death timers get longer, because an enemy being dead stops them from farming. Just make sure you're not spending too much time trying to chase kills instead of collecting souls. If you reprioritize how you farm, you will see massive improvement in your games. Keep this order in mind and try to farm for things that get your whole team ahead instead of just you. If you learned anything in this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember to check out that Soul the Dying video I made. If you have any questions about anything I talked about, feel free to leave them in the comments, or come by to my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/logicdefender.